Hi, so we are going to cover the second lecture about cost-benefit analysis. So this time we are going to focus on the steps and the different perspectives that we can take when performing a cost-benefit analysis. So let's go to my full desktop. You can find this file on learning materials. You will find a PDF file in there. So this is still an introduction to cost-benefit analysis. During the previous session, we covered issues such as the net present value, and particularly we focus as well on this equation that we have in here. So net social benefits equal benefits minus costs. I think it's a very simple equation. Benefits minus costs is the net social benefit. So we start here with the definition of a CBA. So CBA is a policy assessment method, and what the end result of this cost-benefit analysis is to calculate the net social benefits for each policy alternative. So once we have a policy, there are many alternatives, and then we need to calculate the net social benefits for all. Yes, so the net social benefits equal the social benefits minus the social costs. Okay, so there are arguments against the CBA analysis. So many government and public institutions have to develop cost-benefit analysis when producing any policy. So what are the two arguments against? The first one is that the fundamental assumption of CBA, this is that there's need to be like a maximized utility. Yes, uh, sometimes when we maximize our utility, we minimize the utility of others. So in doing that, then we will have losses among people. So there should not be any trade-off between the benefits of a group and the one person's costs. So that is the first argument against CBA. The second argument is that public policy participants disagree about specific issues of a CBA, such as how to calculate the cost and benefits, what are going to be the impacts over time. I think that is sometimes more like an art rather than a science, and whether an impact is a cost or a benefit. Yes, so for some items, you can probably put that item as a cost, but also you can put that item as a benefit. So we will be seeing examples of that, and how to make trade-off between the present and future. So sometimes if we take the perspective or the global perspective, an impact, for instance, pollution of the air might be a cost, yes, whereas it's not taken into account when we take like the local perspective. So what is the purpose and uses of CBA? So the purpose is to help effective social decision making through efficient allocation of resources when the markets fail. So when markets fail, CBA can be used to clarify which is the potential of alternative programs or projects, and which one is the most efficient. So in general, what we want to do is to assess different alternatives, and from these alternatives, carry on analyzing what is the most efficient, like for instance in terms of problems. You can think of the pandemic. So there were many cost benefits analysis in terms of what to do in order to tackle the crisis. Yes, so you can think of that example. So there are different types of CBA analysis. Ex ante means that is conducted before the policy. Ex post means that is conducted at the end of the policy to provide information about a particular class of intervention. In medias res means that the CBA analysis, the cost-benefit analysis, is conducted during the intervention, meanwhile the policy is performed. We do not know, for instance, still many cost benefits analysis from Brexit. So that is like an issue that is developing still, a decision, a policy that was taken. And as you can see, that it can be a good example of in medias res CBA. There is as well a comparative CBA. The comparative CBA, as the name says, compares the predictions and the results. So once we have predictions, that means that is before the intervention, and exposed means that we compare that with the results that we had. Just a little bit such as in forecasting. Yes, we compare the validation period with the same regression that we had during the training period. So so very few of these comparisons have been conducted because the clients of ex post analysis are different from the clients of ex ante analysis. Okay, so ex ante analysis is most useful for making resource allocation decisions. So once, for instance, if you want to build a bridge, and you want to make resource allocation decisions, ex ante is going to be more useful. In medias res CBA analysis can also be used for this purpose. So if you are like building up a dam, for instance, you will be able to carry on conducting a CBA analysis in the different parts of the projects. And ex post analysis, well, with this ex post analysis, is very or is too late actually to divert resources to alternative uses. So the ex post analysis is more for comparison reasons, or to try to get to know what happened if something goes wrong, for instance. So learning about the net social benefits of a specific project. Um, so so ex post analysis is the most useful for looking at that efficiency of a particular project. So if it is done after Brexit, we will get to know what were the benefits and costs of that particular intervention in our economy. And that follows as well the in medias res and the ex ante in that order. So the reason is that the more we learn about the actual impacts, uh, well, we are going to have like a more like a correct assessment of whether we have benefits or positive net benefits. So another thing is the learning about the potential benefits of similar projects. So ex post analysis also provides information about the probable cost and benefits of similar future informations. So ex post analysis is important, in which we are able to use alternative CBA analysis to compare. So the amount of learning depends of the representativeness of the particular project. How the project is like can expand to other projects on a setting where we have large scale projects. So what about the efficacy of CBA? So we also have the possibility of learning about the efficacy of CBA when we compare ex ante analysis, so before the intervention, with in medias res on or export analysis. So the efficacy is based upon how well the first CBA analysis uh, was conducted. So it's an assessment of the initial CBA analysis in order to get to know what is the error or the efficacy degree of the first CBA analysis. Okay, so these are the characteristics, and now I would like to focus on the basic steps of CBA. So we have not covered this so far, but CBA can be broken into basic steps. This topic of CBA analysis is important as probably is going to be like one requirement if you want to work in the public sector, especially also if in mergers and acquisitions, and there are many other like private organizations that also use CBA. So we will focus on that later. What are the basic steps of CBA? Step number 1, specify the alternative projects. So every time that we are like making a project, there are different type of alternatives. So say that the project was Brexit. Brexit actually had many different types of possibilities. A Norway agreement, a Swiss agreement, a Canada agreement, a free trade agreement, etc. Or just WTO. As you can see, there were different types of alternatives for that event or for that project. So, for instance, we have as well a situation in which we need to assess like the different potential alternatives for the pandemic. That might be another different type of alternative solutions to the crisis and how to tackle that. I remember that at the beginning of the crisis, we were assessing what was the right way to go, the right solution, if we should just rely on herd immunity or if we should just tackle the issue with lockdowns. Yes, so those countries that went to try to tackle by herd immunity suffered a lot. Yes, and I think they needed to come back to the other policy that was enacted initially in China, which is lockdowns and more um, draconian solutions for the pandemic. So, so when this hypothetical project that we have when we try to compare certain project is called the counterfactual, and it's usually the status quo. We can also think of the status quo as a solution. So doing something, not to do something, or doing performing a different solution. So the step number 2 is to decide whose benefits and cost count. So that is called the standing. So the costs and benefits depend on the person or the subjects of the cost-benefit analysis. Some people might perform national level cost-benefit analysis, but some others would prefer to do provincial cost-benefit analysis. Uh, Many people favor the national and even more the global cost and benefit analysis because they are very interested in environmental issues. So the global standing is as well some of the ways in which we can perform a CBA analysis. They will change depending on the perspective. Costs and benefits will not be the same. Um, so for other type of projects where there are not many impacts in the environment, some advocate as well for the standing at a more lower level, yes, like in a state or province or local government CBA analysis. So that is the step number 2, um, whose benefits and costs count. This is the standing. Number 3, identify the impact categories, catalog them, and select the measurement indicators. So we need to identify the impact categories of the alternatives. These impacts are going to be categorized in benefits and costs, and we need to specify the measurement indicator of each impact category, which is, as you can see, something very difficult and abstract, rather than and subjective, I would say, rather than objective. So CBA analysis should only include impacts that affect individual utility of human beings. So this also will go against a little bit against nature, because sometimes the costs of nature are not taken into account. So there must be a cause and effect relationship between a project outcome and the individual's utility. Yes, so be aware that the impact of categories may be valued in opposite by different individuals. Yes, so some individuals may see an impact as a cost, whereas others can be an impact as a benefit. So sometimes when we have that problem of like choosing what like certain impact category is a benefit of or a cost, it's useful to create two separate categories for that impact. Okay, the step number 4 is to predict the impacts quantitatively over the life of the project. Prediction is difficult. We have conducted like many sessions about forecasting and predictions. You have seen how difficult it is to get a good forecasting, a good prediction. So supply and demand curves are usually like developed in order to take decisions. The problem is that they change um, during like the span of the project, and they are usually not known. So that makes very difficult to quantify the impacts of certain project or intervention, and to conceptually choose like the correct method to like predict what is going to be the impact quantitatively. So in general, it's more difficult to quantify the impacts if a project has a very long run horizon than when we have like a short run horizon. So it's better when the horizon is like smaller. Also, if the relationship between the variables of the projects are complex, so if there are, for instance, many categories that have both way causal relationships between variables, yes, so one variable affecting the other and the other way around. The step number 5 is monetize. Yes, attach dollar values to all impacts. In CBA, the value is measured in terms of willingness to pay, which is obtained from demand curves. Yes, this is difficult, or many impacts are difficult to value in dollar terms because they are not traded in the markets. Yes, so there are many impacts that are actually, and categories that you just cannot trade in the markets. Yes, um, so if no one is willing to pay for that impact, so it has a zero value. So if we are talking about air, yes, no one is willing to pay for air, so the value is zero, but the actual effect on pollution will cause a very damaging effect. So it's very difficult to monetize that. Step number 6, sorry, is the discount benefits and costs to obtain present values. So choosing a discount rate is very difficult, and we talk about that. Usually we say during the previous session that the treasury bill is used as a discount value. So impacts are discounted because almost everybody has a preference for consumption now rather than later. So the appropriate discount value method and level is contentious. So so often the rate is mandated by a government agency responsible for financial and budgetary oversight for the government agencies. In the reality, sometimes we use rates that are different from the treasury bill, because sometimes the treasury bills are only rates that are accessible for banks, and we want to get to know what are the costs for businesses, if for instance business is the one conducting the CBA. The step number 7 is to compute the net present value of each alternative. So we talked a little bit about net present value the previous time. The net present value uses the rate of discount, and the formula is in here. Yes, so the net present value of the benefits and the net present value of the costs. And we need to choose the alternative with the largest NPV, net present value. So the alternative with the largest present value is the best one and represents the more efficient allocation of resources. One cannot say that is the most efficient allocation of resources because it's not possible, or not all possible alternatives are analyzed when conducting a CBA often. Yes, so there might be many different type of solutions to a problem. The step number 8 is to perform a sensitivity analysis. So you have your impacts and you got your variables, and you need to assess what happened if your variables changed over time. One of your variables is the discount rate. So you will need to assess what happened if the discount rate fluctuates at certain level, or what happened if inflation increases, or what happened if unemployment carry on increasing, etc. So as you can see, since it is needed a sensitive analysis in order to get to know in what threshold our analysis is going to be. So there is usually considerable uncertainty about both predicted impacts and their appropriate monetary valuation. So sensitive analysis will clarify for decision makers how these uncertainties affect the results of the cost-benefit analysis. Finally, the last step is to make a recommendation. Normally, the recommended alternative with the highest net present value, but also we need to take into account the sensitivity analysis. So sometimes not always the best net present value is considered, because sometimes the sensitivity analysis for that policy is actually bigger, so or largest, and that obviously make that solution not the optimal. We have as well, from another topic in CBA analysis, the bureaucratic and political lenses. So in one hand, we have the guardians, yes, and the other half, on the other hand, we have the spenders. So there are three political lenses when conducting a CBA analysis. They are guardians, spenders, and the analyst perspective. So we often see some consequences of the guardian perspective. The guardian perspective ignores non-financial social benefits, such as the time saved, the life saved. The costs are sometimes a cost that are for the entity rather than for the general stakeholders of the cost benefit analysis. So therefore the guardian perspective focuses on the opportunity cost of labor. No, sorry, they focus on the wage remuneration rather than in the opportunity cost of labor. The spenders, on the other hand, they will focus more on the large or the broad um, impacts in the whole community for all the stakeholders of the analysis. So some consequences of the spender's perspective is that they focus on expenditures on constituents are viewed as benefits. So if you pay someone, so if you are in a local council and you pay someone to do something, that is a benefit rather than a cost. Yes, as you are helping the society. And some costs, such as worker wages, are viewed as benefits. This often means support for any project rather than a do-nothing status quo. Is large capital intensive project. You can see what is the big difference with the guardians. There are two different views in there. Guardians is more focused on the it's more egocentric, if you want. It's just assess the institution that is performing the cost benefit analysis, whereas the spenders view look at all stakeholders and how these the impacts are cost benefits, depending on whether they impact all of them rather than like one, as in the guardian example or the guardian perspective. Okay, guys, so I think we are coming to the end of this session. Cost benefit is very important because it is used by governments, by the courts, environmental and other progressive groups, CBA sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and the triple bottom line as well. So many businesses have this or have incorporated this as a result of many green projects and like the green laws that we have had during the last years. So governments mandate sometimes CBA analysis. Courts demand CBA analysis to assess appropriate damages. Environmental and other progressive courts like to determine the liability and our damages for like in the environment, CBA, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and the triple bottom line are paying attention a lot to sustainability and corporate social responsibility. They want to look green, yes, and yes, so that is the demand for the CBA, and why it's very important. The government economic service, for instance, for many posts, uh, um, prefer people that have some fundamentals in cost benefit analysis. So, and I think that is pretty much that I wanted to cover with you. We finish with this topic about the demand for the CBA this lecture.